Hello there. Let's continue our conversations on Stoicism. We're going over the Moral Letters by Seneca. We've landed in letter 35, and although this may not be exactly the topic of the letter, I thought this would be maybe an interesting topic to bring up. That didn't steep long enough, but that's okay. Letter 35. From Seneca to Lucilius, greetings. When I urge you so strongly to study, I'm serving my own ends. I want to have a friend, and this cannot happen for me unless you persevere in your program of self-improvement. For as it is, you love me, but you are not my friend. What do you mean? Is there a difference between the two? Actually, they are quite dissimilar. A friend loves, but one who loves is not automatically a friend. That's why friendship is always beneficial, but love is sometimes even harmful. If nothing else, make your progress for this reason, to learn how to love. And this made me think about a topic that is, I think, always hot on the minds of clinical psychologists, the toxic relationship. And I think that it's an important topic that I don't recall we've really ever gone into before. But the toxic relationship is an interesting one. And again, I just had to think about that when I read that. I don't know why exactly, but I like to try and use some free associations for these videos, if you'll forgive me. So, a toxic relationship that's bad for you, and I think most of us, probably many of us, probably all of us actually have experienced that at some point or another. And that can be anything. Could be a friend, could be a family member, could be a romantic relationship, could be anything, right? The point of a toxic relationship is that it is a relationship that is no longer beneficial to you, that is no longer giving you contentment, fulfillment, pleasure, but that actually has turned very sour. And let me just point out before I continue, I'm not talking about anyone in particular, because sometimes when I say these kinds of things, people then send me private messages saying, "Are you okay?" Yes, I'm very much okay. Nothing has happened. I'm just talking about this in general terms, right? The point, I think, with toxic relationships is that they affect us negatively, of course, because they are toxic, but we don't always know how to handle them or realize fully how to handle them. And that made me think, what would a Stoic say or write about toxic relationships? And I think that this is one of the cases where Stoicism might break down a little bit, which to me has not been very common, but it can happen. I distinctly remember a passage in the writings of Epictetus, so not really Epictetus, but his student Arrian, who quotes Epictetus, and Epictetus is talking about difficult relationships with, I think, a father or something, or a brother. And the point from Epictetus, being the Stoic teacher, is of course very obvious, namely, well, if someone is unpleasant to you, what can you do? You can't change them, so you just have to accept it. Well, that is certainly an interesting viewpoint, but I don't think that is necessarily a very healthy viewpoint. If you are in a toxic relationship, and again, there can be a friendship, there can be a relationship with a family member, there can be a romantic relationship, it can be any of these things. But if you are in such a relationship and you realize it, because it often takes a bit of time to realize, then get out. Get out. And I'm not saying that that's easy. It can be really quite difficult, especially in very unpleasant toxic relationships. But I'm, again, in these videos, really trying to talk about everyday things. So I'm not talking about, say, physically abusive relationships or something. I'm more talking about that one friend that used to be such a wonderful friend, but who now seems to be taking advantage of you. And I think from a Stoic viewpoint, yes, of course, the point is, well, you must tolerate that because you're a Stoic, and whatever they do or say, that's not within your control, so then you must accept that. But I do think that as a psychologist, albeit not a clinical one, I would have some serious objections to that reasoning. if you truly are in a toxic relationship, and once you realize you are, then you truly know, and then it's very clear, really the only thing for you to do is to get out and to end that relationship. And that can be very difficult, because let's stick to the friendship that used to be good, but then now no longer gives you anything. For example, every time you try to meet that friend, he or she is late, and so late that often they end up cancelling while you're just sitting there waiting for them. These kinds of things. Or somewhat more severe relationships where someone is really taking advantage of you, is really seems to be the person that seems to be using you for their own good, but that does not ever return the favor. That's a toxic relationship too. That too is a relationship that will yield very little for you. So I think in such cases, the Stoic viewpoint of, well, it's just the way it is, so what can you do but accept it, really is an exceptionally poor viewpoint, and just not something I can support. Anyway, that's what I would say. Now, Seneca here has this wonderful turn of phrase. For as it is, you love me, but you are not my friend. What do you mean? Is there any difference between the two? Actually, they are quite dissimilar. A friend loves, but one who loves is not automatically a friend. That's why friendship is always beneficial, but love is sometimes even harmful. Now, I don't know exactly if I'm interpreting this correctly, but I definitely think he's on to something here. A true friendship is beneficial because it is mutual. But love is not always mutual. And that doesn't have to be romantic love. That can be completely platonic, amiable, friendshiply love. But it's not always a mutual thing. And when it's no longer a mutual thing, then again, you might be in a toxic relationship. You might be in a relationship that has expired. And that, I think, I have come to accept over the years as a truth. I am paraphrasing the very last episode of BoJack Horseman, which I thought in many ways was a brilliant TV series, animated series, where, if you know the premise, Diane and BoJack are talking, and one tells the other, and I have to paraphrase because I don't have the quote at hand, but you know, there are people in your life that help you become the person that you end up being, even though they were never meant to be in your life forever. And you can still be grateful to them for that. And I thought that was again, that series had some remarkably profound moments in it, and I thought that was one of them. Because I think it's very true. There are people in your life who help you become the person that you end up being, but were never intended to be in your life forever. And that's okay. That's okay. To stick with, well, this was Latin actually, but stick with Greek stuff, pantare, everything flows, right? The whole universe flows, time flows, everything moves on, and nothing is meant to last forever. Things will always at some point disintegrate or go back to entropy, whatever you like to call it. And I think it's the same thing with the relationships that we engage in as human beings. Some will last until the day one of you dies, and some, and again, it's not just romantic relationships, it's friendships too, right? I'm talking about any type of relationship. Some simply phase out at some point. And that's perfectly acceptable. You can be grateful for what you have had when things were good, but then at some point it's over. The friendship is no longer a friendship. The relationship is no longer a relationship, whatever. And the time has come to move on. And that's it. It's important to recognize that moment. And when you feel that there's something off, then there probably is something off. And that might simply be a signal to move on. Not everything can be repaired. Not everything can be talked through and resolved. Some things are just over. Their expiration date has passed, and you move on. Anyway, this was hopefully not too incoherent. But that in a nutshell, as far as I'm concerned, is the toxic relationship. And remember that it takes a lot of courage to get out of that. Ending any relationship is not easy. And if it's a friend who's become toxic, you've been friends for a reason, right? So it's not easy to end that. And it's painful. But in the end, I think both of you will come out better. Will come out as better people, because it's clear that relationship is just not working anymore. That's what I have. I hope this was useful, and I'll gladly see you again next week for more talk about Stoicism. Bye!